awesome. Yeah, welcome to which number of session is this? Fourth or fifth?
Probably fifth.
Yeah, that would be my best guess as well. Pretty excited about this development. We've gotten to do a lot of different activities. The main thing is the whole building good habits thought processes before we press our buttons. So also challenge our, let's say, mm, instinct
Yeah,
and not necessarily just filing it under, oh, this is an autoplay, but actually being curious about why is this the autoplay and why do we have to keep challenging that in order to find the exception to that rule as well. That's some of the stuff that I think is the most important thing about this. Like the way you're used to playing Magic is a serviceable plus way of playing Magic, but in order to
yeah,
like get over the hump more frequently, we probably have to take a step up the ladder of questioning more. Why do we ponder? What kind of range do we have covered on the side of the opponent? And being aware of strengths and weaknesses of a lot more sequences, basically. Keep track of where the game is going, what is important. We already had a few examples of situations where your instinct and my instinct were like complete opposite.
yeah,
I, I can't really forget the opening against Mono Red, where it was basically Tameo, a card that we don't have infinite experience with, but we already have an idea about how should that card be played. It's like get it going as soon as possible, get some cards in the bank for later when we have unused mana. So we obviously start our game like that, and then we ended up against a deck that actually put on enough pressure turns 1 and 2 that they got us into an awkward spot.
yeah,
Um, and that was just a good example of, yeah, Temio plays out like that 9 out of 10 times, and we need to find the 1 out of 10 where it doesn't. If we want to play Magic at a high level. So that's some of my favorite moments so far.
yeah.
And
No, I agree.
for today, you said you really wanted to go into like VOD review, and that is a very, very valuable tool if you know how to use it, basically.
Yeah,
Um, like you also follow a lot of sports, so you obviously know, oh yeah, teams have film sessions, etc. But we don't
yeah,
really know what's going on in there unless we have some kind of insider information, right? So
yeah,
what that means for Magic, for me, is basically that we are willing to basically spend double the time on a game instead of just starting a new game, right? We could do that instead, just play new games. But we value the going into an already played game, maybe try and detach ourselves from the situation. Maybe there were some emotions, maybe there was some read, and then the theory is that we get some more eyes on it, and we can kind of a bit more objectively um, kind of rate what we did and what we should have done and what factors were at
yeah,
stake. So that's kind of how I approach the VOD review. I'll also say that it'll always be like stuff you haven't thought about. Even if you watch this back 4 times, I promise you there will be something new in it. So I'm pretty excited to see if that holds true. Just some more angles, some more, yeah, just ways that stuff that kind of guides us through the game. Small stuff that I pick up on, or stuff you'll pick up on next time you play the
yeah.
matchup, or whatever the case may be. So I hope that's what we have in store.
No, I think I've got a few games. I've got one game that I think was really interesting, and this is all on the Stifle Knot deck. There's a few other really cool games that was on a different deck. So I think it's important that we use the Stifle Knot deck because you're talking about sideboarding choices and how that plays in. So, for instance, one card that's been overperforming for me was Hullbreacher, specifically because we have Ancient Tomb. I think without Ancient Tomb, I'd be much less willing to play it. But with Ancient Tomb, it's so much more powerful. There was a game where it was very relevant because I had Ancient Tomb, Island, where if that was a regular land, I wouldn't be able to hold up a mana. And because I was able to hold up, I was able to hold up a Blue Blast and a Pyroblast that made all the difference. That
Yeah.
turned their Brainstorm from resolving successfully into a 4-for-1 for me. Um, so it's just like little things like that you can make a huge. Obviously, Ancient Tomb is not a little thing; it's a very important card in the format.
Yeah.
But a little thing, just like only playing Hull Breacher because we have Ancient Tomb, really made a huge difference, and that's been coming up quite a bit. Um,
Yeah, and that's cool to see because that is something that you kind of decided in theory already, right? you decided in theory that this would catch people off guard. There's
Yeah.
enough amount of blue decks in order to make this card even worth it. And I'm gonna catch people off guard. I'm doing off metagame things. So it's very similar to Bowmasters in the punishment, except people don't really play around it. So you actually get the blowouts. Very few people are getting the Bowmaster blowouts these days, simply because it's so
Telegraphed.
transcribed.
Yeah, it's very telegraphed.
Telegraphed. Yeah, that's the one. So I like that a lot, and that also feels very rewarding because that is, at the end of the day, part of your innovation, right? So it feels good. That's why you build
Yeah.
and get creative and stuff like that. It's for those moments, right? So
Yeah.
happy to hear that. So yeah, you can just share whenever you're ready to get into it.
So this is, let me get to the game. I believe it's here it is. Okay, so this is basically this is against BCS, who is the runner-up at Eternal Weekend in NA. He was on.
Cool.
So he used to stream. I don't know if he streams anymore, but no, he's a cool guy. I like him.
I remember the name. Does it have numbers in it?
Yeah, BCS 8995.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
Let me go ahead and share my screen with you so you can actually see it.
Yeah, and then I'll try and just structure it a tiny bit on how I usually have success with doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, we win the die roll here. Are we playing against a known matchup or in the dark?
In the dark, totally in the dark.
Okay, perfect.
Uh,
So if you just go for, oh, you actually have the VOD. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so yeah, talk me through a little bit about this opening hand and like the potential that it serves.
So honestly, I think this is a pretty defined hand, right? We have turn 1 Tameo. We have Brainstorm to fix our hand. Like, I don't think we're getting much better. Obviously, seeing Dreadnought double Drifter is usually not good in your opening hand, but we have a good turn 1 play. We have a good turn 2 play. And Drifter Drifter is still at its worst. Like, it's still divination. Like, it's not like the worst thing to be doing if we've stalled out the game because they've had to respect Tameo and Brainstorm. We do get a little blown out if they have some kind of like fast combo start. But I think this hand is too good to not keep, especially on the play. Like, it just does everything we want it to do, and we have a Brainstorm to either protect our Tameo or just fix our hand, depending on the matchup. And there's very little, like, obviously if we're playing against Oops or Saga Storm or like any of these other turn 1 decks or Necro Dominance, like, yeah, we're cooked. But I don't think I would ever mulligan this hand.
No, I agree. That's also why I specifically asked about the keeper mulligan is not particularly interesting, because if this was not a keep, we were playing an unplayable deck. Like, we needed to play other numbers of our cards. Otherwise,
yeah, exactly.
So it is obviously a keep into the current legacy metagame, and it's quite straightforward here. We want to play the Tameo and lean on the Brainstorm to kind of fix our hand. So I agree. Very, very fixed here. It's just strictly optimal to play the island instead of Flooded Strand, so no interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So let's try and see when we kind of get information about the opponent's deck, because Misty and Underground Sea Ponder. So yeah,
Underground Sea. So I'm thinking Reanimator. Like 9 times out of 10, if I see this start, I'm thinking Reanimator, only because it's just like literally 30% of the meta online or something.
Not at all. But not at all. It's I just checked today. It's 13.
Online?
13 last 7 days on Goldfish. Yeah.
Oh, really? In paper and online, or just online?
Let's see. Goldfish, you can also upload your paper tournament in theory. So I don't know. But anyways, Goldfish data. So that's 5-0 leagues and duel and prelims, top 32 in challenges, all of that combined. So it's not that high.
All right, so let's play it out. It definitely feels that high.
Yeah. Percentage-wise, it's double as popular as the Fair Demir decks. So in theory, we are up against Reanimator 2/3 of the time out of this opening.
Yeah.
I guess there's also some weird decks in there, so maybe a little bit less. Okay, Ancient Tomb to draw here, so I guess you want to be mana efficient and flip the Tameo?
So here, because they went for the Underground Sea, I'm pretty sure I get my token in, and then I think I do go for Brainstorm. I play Flooded Strand, then go for Brainstorm. So let's see.
That's already the first actual decision. So how I usually approach this is, we're exchanging information with our opponent. We have only showed our opponent we're a blue deck with Tameo so far, but they have now shown us that they're a blue-black deck, and they kept their ponder. So if you're already in, like, what about your sense of urgency here? Are you like super motivated to go find a Force of Will? Like, how can you tell me a little bit about like how that influences your play here?
So I'm pretty motivated to try to find some kind of interaction. I don't want to just sit here and just get blown out if they have Entomb Reanimate like Force of Will, because I just lose. So my urgency is pretty high at this point after I see the Underground Sea, because I could just
Yeah.
get blown out. But I don't think I ever Ancient Tomb here, only because I do need to find some kind of interaction, because right now I have 0 interaction in my hand.
So let me get this straight. So you're saying the opponent fetching Underground Sea and keeping their ponder makes you very motivated to find interaction. So you don't want to Null Drifter that don't because it only digs 2 cards versus Brainstorm's 3 cards, or what's your logic here?
Null Drifter in the yard turns on their Reanimates.
Okay, so we have more context of 2/3 of the time, because let's just say we in a perfect world we know like the metagame share, right? So we kind of know the statistics. Okay, so 2/3 of the time we can get punished by Reanimate without them having an Entomb, so Null Drifter is potentially enabling their game plan. Okay, that
Yeah.
is a huge thing to have onto the table, because my first instinct here was to use like mana usage. Use your 3 mana, just flip your Tameo. That's like in a vacuum, right? But you're saying, oh, 2/3 of the time, this is the context, and I just help my opponent get a Null Drifter, and then that would be very bad for me.
Yeah.
So I like this a lot because you're the risk. This is again back to the topic. What will happen most frequently, and what will be most brutal if it happens? So you're applying the worst case scenario and saying, I want to shy away from that. So I really like that, and I agree with that choice if that's what you end up making.
I'm pretty sure it is. It's been a while since
Yeah.
this game. But
And
this
if
is
you don't, that's totally fair. This is why we rewatch, because we want to do better tomorrow. This is not to
yeah.
hit you over the head that you didn't do well 2 weeks ago. This is to do better tomorrow, right? So no matter what you do in these replays, we'll always be progressive and look ahead about it.
Yeah. And I specifically chose this game because it's against someone who's very good, and I wanted to actually get games against someone who is going to be very good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
So we
this is a
brainstorm
brutal.
yeah, these cards are incredibly bad. I like what you did here. So let me just quickly pause it here and ask you, what was the point of making your land drop before casting the brainstorm?
I don't want to get dazed.
You don't want to get dazed. Okay, that's interesting. I actually wouldn't mind getting dazed in this spot, so I would actually be inclined to invite my opponent to daze here.
So because well, if they daze and the brainstorm doesn't fix, my hand is still awful.
Your hand is still awful, except you have, some draw twos and you want a lot of tempo, right?
The problem with the Null Drifter is I don't have that many win conditions either. If I'm just sending Null Drifters into the void like that, one, it's a liability because I only have 7 win conditions in the deck, right? I have 4 Drifters and 3 Dreadnoughts. So sending a Null Drifter that also has no cards, I'm just drawing 2, is pretty brutal. And if that does get dazed and my Tameo doesn't flip, that's fine. But I also really like getting the flip Tameo because this also forces action on the Tameo that they have to respect. Because now I'm putting them on Blue Black Reanimator because one, BCS is a good player, and I think he's the type of player that'll play a best deck. Now, obviously, it's a league, so people generally aren't gonna like be cutthroat in leagues like they would in like an Eternal Weekend or something. But still, if he's on Blue Black Reanimator, like there's so much downside to just sending Null Drifter here because not only if I get dazed, I get cooked. If I go for the Null Drifter and they have Reanimate, because I'm basically entombing for them, because the Null Drifter is a great Reanimate target. It's a 4/4 flyer that essentially wastelands me every turn, which is pretty good. And then in addition to that, I don't get my flipped Tameo, and then I don't have a Brainstorm, which means I lose out on any card selection. Because I really do want to get this Dreadnought out of my hand. It's just so dead. So like resolving that Brainstorm is very important to me.
Okay. I like your logic a lot because it's a lot of small things adding up, and my instinct is very focused on like one scenario in a vacuum, right? But you're applying a lot of context here. I really like that. Also, I will say an even bigger upside to your play that is, I think you already made sound arguments, but there's an even better one that if the opponent is on a fair deck, then if he dazes the brainstorm, they can untap and fatal push or Tameo. That would be disastrous.
Yeah.
So there's even a lot of cards they are playing on the other side of the blue-black spectrum that would punish that, and that would turn the day's play from I just said it would be good tempo, but that would just actually be them being able to get mileage out of a otherwise dead card.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really like the logic here. When you sit here, you're probably uncovering more than you are in the moment. But that's why we practice, right? We're here to make sure that next time you don't only think about 3 things, you maybe think about 4 things or 5 things, right?
And the other thing is, like, do we use Brainstorm to bait out a removal spell? The problem is, then what happens is we kind of get into a situation where we have to respect Bowmaster, and I really don't want to have to respect Bowmaster with this deck.
Exactly. So again, you're saying 1/3 of the time it's going to be a Bowmaster Fatal Push deck, so our play makes even more sense into that.
Yeah.
With that being said, terrible Brainstorm, and now it's basically Tameo against the world.
It's Tameo against and a Surveil land, which I think I'm going to take out of the deck, but we can talk about that later. So what do they do here?
Oh wow, here's a tropical.
So this changes everything.
All bets. Oh my god. All bets are off here.
This is where I think the game really warps in his favor.
Oh, no doubt. You know that better than anybody.
Oh,
you're 2-for-1 with command. Then
I love Witherbloom command, but I also put him on Bug Beans now, which is pretty difficult for us because it's a control deck in the end of the day.
What's the card number 2 in their graveyard?
It's Mystic.
They came from the pipes. That's hopefully not the card.
No. This town ain't big enough.
And I don't even know that card. Wow,
it's a standard card. It's actually really good. I think it'll actually... I've been trying to make a deck with it in Legacy. You should read that card because it's the point of the entire deck.
Oh, sick. The town ain't big enough. MTG, okay. Okay, yeah, I see. So that card has Beanstalk written all over it, so great information gathering here. We fetched and surveilled. Did you keep the card you found?
Yes, it was a Doorkeeper Thrall.
Oh, sick. Yeah, so now we kind of, I don't know if we even force check our opponent, but we do some relevant stuff at least.
So here, there's actually a lot that goes on here. If I'm putting them on Bug Beans, they usually run a very low days count. Like we're talking like 1 to 2. Because I'm putting them on Pokemoki's list with like an iteration. And they usually don't have that many dazes because they just can't fit it, and they're a deck that wants their mana. So here I'm thinking, look, I get blown out by daze, but that's it. And
How do you get blown out by
because
daze?
I'm going to go for Dreadnought here.
Okay. But I see 4 mana.
I have 3. Because I'm going to Doorkeeper Thrall plus Dreadnought this turn.
Yeah, but you already have the blue floating, right?
Oh, yeah. For some reason, I thought this was tap for some reason.
Yeah, you're good against daze here.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's just imagine that was a normal land. Then your arguments of they're a low daze deck, so I would have went for the Dreadnought. Like, we can imagine scenarios here, right?
Yeah.
And I agree about that. I think you're playing too scared if you don't. Let's just say that's a basic island in play, and you don't go for your move, then I think you're playing too scared. So Magic is always walking the balance of respecting what's going on and then realizing what can you actually beat. And I don't think respecting days here was one of them. We kind of need to get going.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't respect days. They actually end up forcing this Thrall, which is good for us because they're using a force without a Beanstalk down. That's really good for us because it's one of their best enablers.
Yeah. In a vacuum, that's a good exchange. But looking at your hand...
Yeah, it's awful. But they don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know that. But it's interesting how evaluation can change, right? Because I totally agree with you. My first thought was, yeah, go ahead and force that. But it actually hurts your hand a lot. All right, a little bit of Uro action. By the way, what do you think about this play that you should have cracked your clue in response here, in response to the Force of Will? How do you feel about that play?
I know there's nothing I can draw that would be relevant.
Yeah, but the opponent doesn't know.
So
and you're going to do this anyway. in his turn cycle.
That's true. I guess I could. In my head, I'm thinking it doesn't matter but I
Hmm.
guess it matters for feigning information. But,
Yes, exactly. Then you
but
look like somebody with a blue card looking for a force looking
yeah,
for a blue card. You will put stories into your opponent's head that isn't there, and that is just good by definition. So, and it's free because you're going to do it anyway this turn cycle.
yeah,
And there exists a world where that deck plays Bowmaster, and you even get punished for it.
that's true.
So, yeah, just a lot of good reasons, and zero reasons not to. Basically,
Because
it's
we're
too
going
cheap.
to anyway. Yeah. No, that's
Hmm.
very true. I'm actually surprised I didn't hear.
Yeah,
Honestly, I think this was probably like a pretty late night game for me, where
yeah.
I'm just
If you
like
have that
on
in your arsenal,
autopilot.
perfect. I just want to highlight why it's powerful.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Ooh, nice. So now we have kind of back-to-back enabler again. That's
Yeah.
sick.
Torpor Orb, their F6, Slam a Dreadnought go.
So, what information did that tell you that the opponent wanted to force will the Thrall? What are you thinking about the opponent's hand when they do that play?
They're light on removal. Or they're like. The thing is, obviously, if I'm thralling, they know I'm on Dreadnoughts.
Hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind. Like, they definitely know I'm playing Dreadnought, and they're
Yeah.
doing it because. I mean, they'd rather do that. They don't know if I'm on Null Drifter, but maybe they do. BCS is pretty in tune with the meta, but I'm not sure how much he knows that I've been playing this deck.
Yeah, it's for me. It would be okay. There's Ancient Tomb. I would just quickly think about this stuff with double colorless in the casting cost, and Null Drifter is for sure on my radar if I'm the opponent here. I think that you play the Thrall, the cat is out of the bag. But we also now know that the opponent's hand is not triple removal spell, because then they would
Yeah,
have hung on to the Force, because so good with Beanstalk later on, right? So we get a little bit of information, and so do they. That's just how it goes.
yeah.
But I like to highlight these details here, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to narrow down their hand, um, the plays they make. So I would guess they have the first removal, but not the second. So last turn they played around you having double Dreadnought. Let's see if that's true. If so, do you like the card on top? Because you are drawing a second orb here.
I think I keep it because I'm afraid of abrupt decay and stuff like that because they have a lot
Yep.
of ways of killing this, and I
Yeah.
have null drifters to restock. So the problem is I'm so reliant on getting these null drifters in that in my head I'm thinking, okay, so now they this towns, um, so they're gonna draw a card and bounce my dreadnought, and that's fine.
Okay, it's a pretty cool play.
And I slam the drifter.
Yeah, this is sick. How many genres do you play?
I can't remember how many were in this list.
It's mainly just I'm looking at the white fetch here. I was just scared we could get into some situation here.
I think I had 3 tundras and a plains and a meticulous archive.
Okay. Yeah, I like the uncracked mesa here in that case. So now we get into kind of the opposite of what the opponent wants to have happen here. You obviously sequence well here against Days. It looks like 2 Tundras Surveillance.
So here I
Oh,
try to
okay.
see if they have the days, if they want to do it. But they were F6, so I just went for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I'm super insulated to like Abrupt Decay and another Witherbloom command, which I'm concerned about. They usually run at least 2 Abrupt Decay because it's really good.
Yeah,
So I just don't want to get blown out by Abrupt Decay.
that makes a lot of sense. Is the opponent just going to Uro here? Yeah. Okay,
That's fine.
so
It doesn't
this is
do anything.
really this is actually a super cool game because after your brainstorm, the advantage meter was heavily in the opponent's favor. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
so this shows a lot about how powerful your enablers are and how right the opponent was to fight over the thrall. So ironically, it's a little bit of everything here. And now it's just your I really like that you're just saying let's just get as deep in my deck as possible, trying to seal it, and that's usually force of will. That is your way to make sure the opponent doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this end step dress down.
Let's go back because music randomly started playing, and I was like trying to figure out where it was coming from.
Yeah, got it. So
Okay, let's go back. So, okay, so this is this turn. They play the Uro, and then we do our big turn. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Okay. So the reason for the end step dress down is because I'm pretty sure I'm winning this game. They have 3 cards in hand.
Yeah.
I can really do anything here. If they swing with the Uro, I don't want to give them any draws. They're at 6
Yeah.
health. I'm threatening lethal. I just want to turn off any amount of options they have. I want to
Yeah.
turn off them bringing in a Bowmaster. I want them to be tapped out while I do this because Bug does actually run some number of stuff like Spell Pierce, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have days based on how they had F6'd previously.
Yes.
So in my head, I'm thinking I just want to turn off as many outs for them as they could possibly have. So I'm just going to dress down here, turn off the
Yep.
Uro draw. I can double block if I need to, which I probably would if they attack.
Hmm.
Only because I don't want to get into a situation where they go upkeep Bowmaster kill me.
Yeah.
Because
The
then I
thing is,
can't
we have
force.
agree, except we have double Torpor Orb in play, so there. I mean, we're guarded against that. So it's mainly something like with a Bloom Command draining you
Yeah,
out.
I guess not
That's the plan.
Bowmaster, but it's like anything, right? I don't want to be in a
Yeah.
situation where I can't force anymore.
Yeah. So your mindset is a lot what I describe as the how to get from 99% to 100%. Like that's basically you slamming the door here. I guess we can say. Which is kind of the play. So, what kind of comeback mechanisms does that deck have, if any, out of a spot like this?
So another thing they could do is go Murktide, Murktide, and actually present blockers. But
Hmm.
they can't if there's a dress down in play.
Right. So we also stop Murktide Regent.
Yep.
Yeah, I like playing the card because we want to use it this turn anyway. So we play it in the best possible window, and then we kind of just leave it up to the opponent to find a big brain solution to the huge problem here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like to play a lot. I was just curious if there was anything I was missing, like a specific card that you're guarding against, but it's just a long list, and then the you don't really want to come up with it. You just want to shut down that avenue, basically. So okay, concession here. Yeah, that was both impressive. How mainly the impressive thing here was how your deck got you out of a sticky situation. So, and at the end of the day, you put together the deck, so that's credit right back to you.
So here I'm sideboarding. I take out Force of Negation, Force of Wills. I bring in the Force of Negations because I think I decided that I actually do want counter spells because I don't want to let a Beans resolve. Because if they're running something like this town ain't big enough into my deck, if they need to bounce a Null Drifter to survive, that's really good for us.
Hmm.
I'm more concerned about them just accruing a massive amount of value. So, but I also
Yeah.
do want some number of counterspells. There's one thing that I blundered, and that is I should have brought Lavinia into this matchup, and I don't, because
Yeah.
I don't really think about it. But in hindsight, I was like, wait a second, Lavinia is actually insane in this matchup.
Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about that card earlier, and I also mistakenly put it into I categorized it as an anti-combo card of sorts, and I can definitely see this is just good afterthought because Lavinia, oh, my opponent plays Beanstalk, so obviously they're gonna play a bunch of cards like for some
Yeah.
they're cheating the mana cost in some way, right? So,
Hmm.
and if it dies, it's less removal for the Dreadnought and all of that that also the Tameo usually provides, right? So it's a lot of different small stuff on top of each other. So that's definitely a good one. Just quickly on the counterspells versus beans, I agree that we want to fight that card on the stack, ideally. And that is, again, Force of Will is bad in a fair matchup. But here's the exception to the rule. Beanstalk will run away with the game if it's not countered, right? So it's just cool to see that we're applying. Yes, we have this as a kind of a baseline rule, but we're breaking it for good reasons. So that's just to say that it's high level thinking.
And one thing I've noticed too is I need to take the consigns out of the board and probably go down to 2, um, because consign is just not that good. Like it's mostly there for Eldrazi, but the thing is, my Eldrazi matchup is so bad. Like even with consigns, I lose that matchup 9 times out of 10 because sowing Myco. My deck cannot beat sowing Myco spawn. Like if they turn 3 sowing Myco spawn me, the game is over 99% of the time because the card is just egregious. And I because I'm a deck that needs lands to play the game, I
Yeah.
just can't beat sowing Myco spawn. And like passing for 4 turns until I can beat a Mycospawn or hold up Consign or wait until I can get like Doorkeeper, Thrall, Dress Down, and a Dreadnought. And even then, because they have Wastecape Battle Mage, Dreadnought isn't very good. So in general, I think I just need to disrespect Eldrazi and hope I just dodge it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying because you have to hold up mana for something that will potentially happen, that is already a big toll that you're paying, and that delays you so much that they get too much time to do, I mean, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I couldn't tell you if that's true. I generally don't think any deck should give up on any matchup. It's been many years since I've encountered exactly that and had to give up on a certain matchup. I think you can fight the fight. I wouldn't give up on that one. But that's maybe a topic for another day.
Yeah. I mean, if Mycospawn gets banned, then I think we're in a good spot, and I think there's a good
Then
chance it does.
don't wait up for that one.
You don't think it'll get banned?
Nah, not at all. 4.5% deck. Nobody cares about that.
We'll see. I have faith.
And yeah, so it's generally good. I love that you're thinking about like multi uses for your sideboard cards, and also the thought about the Eldrazi. It might not be enough for the Eldrazi. Let's just imagine that's true, right? It's not enough for the Eldrazi matchup. So then you want to bolster something else, and then say, okay, then against the 4.5% of Eldrazi, I'll be really cooked, but I've improved across the board, and that has made my deck more well-rounded in general. Like that's a decision you can make, and not unheard of at all.
Yeah. And I
So
think
that's
there's, and if I was thinking about putting in more removal, but anyway, we can talk about it after. So they go this card, Storm Chaser's Talent, which is a
I saw
standard
people play that
staple.
in Vintage this weekend, and I was not impressed. Let me say that.
The it actually, I mean, I'm not going to spoil the game because we'll get there. It actually runs away with the game. I'll say that.
Hmm.
Mostly, and you'll see why. But I kept this hand. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Um, in hindsight, I probably should have boarded out some number of plows because they didn't really show us that many creatures. Um,
Yeah. So realistically, they're ending the game with. Oh, well, they probably Murktide and Uro deck.
that's the thing is they have Murktide, they have Uro. They're probably bringing in Barrowglyphs because it actually is a good way of handling a Dreadnought. Um, it's not like perfect, but if you're
Yeah.
at 20 health, which you frequently will be at a pretty high health total, because I don't really deal damage until the Dreadnought connects.
Yeah.
So it's like the
Yeah.
Barrowglyph is actually a good answer to it. So I kind of assume that any deck that can run Barrowglyph will run Barrowglyph because it's just a very good card. So that's
It's
why my logic is to
probably a
keeping the
good.
plows.
Yeah, it's probably a good call if you're saying it's already serviceable to begin with because of we know about Uro, we have a pretty good idea about Murktide, and then you even add in the fact that they are a black deck that and black decks like their haymaker creatures out of the sideboard. Um, yeah, I mean I like the plows, but they could also your opponent could also be a Tameo deck for all we know, right? That would be very very uh expected that they win
Yeah.
turn one cameo. So I like all the plows actually.
Yeah. So and usually they're also boarding out counter spells because they're going for just hard removal.
Yeah.
So and my counter spells are really just there for removal and their counter spells.
Yeah, there's a little sub game going on there for sure.
And I
So
like
what?
here and personally, and I think it's important for you to know too, is I'm someone that if I can avoid playing on the stack, I will. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of playing on the stack in matchups where I can get away with it. I'd rather play on the board
Oh yeah.
because I think you run into issues of just Force of Will just being a dead card too often. Um, so I'd like to be in a situation where I just get to play on the stat, where I just get to play for the board. And I
Yeah.
realize I'm a Dreadnought deck, so it's important that I can counter the removal on the Dreadnoughts so that I can actually kill them, so I don't have that much of a threat density. Um, so maybe that is actually something to keep in mind with this new list, is that because my threat density is so much lower than previous lists, maybe I am priced into keeping my counter spells just to protect my Dreadnoughts. Um, but at the same time, it's like personally, I'm not a big fan of playing on the stack, especially in fair games.
Yeah. I just want to elaborate a little bit on that. The theory behind that is basically that fair decks are good at canceling each other out, which makes the game go very long, which makes Force of Will a liability because it
Yeah,
hinders your pound for pound ability to prolong the game. it's mainly a card that prevents stupid stuff from happening or is able to force through stupid things on your end, right?
Yeah.
And in the average game, it's going to be a 1-for-1 game, and it's going to go long. So then it could be a liability. So I think that logic is very, very sound. And then we have the matchup specific details of Beanstalk being potent, so that's worth it. The 2-for-1 up front. That's like the main thing about addressing the opponent's deck, and their main way of making sure they don't die is killing your creatures.
Yeah.
And your Force of Wills in that case could be worth 12 damage, right? So that changes the evaluation of the card. But I do agree about the fundamental analysis.
The yeah. So that's yeah. That I think that's a good summary. So here I surveil. I see Ancient Tomb. I'm pretty happy with that. Ancient Tomb, Torpor Orb, and then I just kind of let the Meticulous Archive fly. So I'm curious what they do here. I will force to protect this. So they Bowmaster. And I think
Ooh.
about brainstorming here, but it's like I don't think so. What I think I want to
No.
do is next turn is plow it.
Yeah. I like this. I like how you played. If you brainstorm here, it's because you have a very, very bad hand, and like you need to, but you actually have a fine hand, right?
Yeah.
So okay, the 1/1 is still annoying. We could have killed that card, but we decided to surveil, which I agree with. And the problem is that you're we can get tempoed out. We talked about this before. Ancient Tomb out of a fair deck, and how many times you can actually tap it before it becomes a liability. So that's just built-in part of the deck, right?
And it
So
actually
they
becomes
try.
a huge liability in this game.
So they decide to do what here? They decide to bounce.
The Torpor
The,
Orb.
okay, and they're on the blue thing. Okay,
Yeah,
that
and
makes
this
sense.
Stormchaser's
That's why.
talent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we can't let that happen. Like we force here, not because it's good to be go 2-for-1, but it also represents advantage because that's how our deck works.
It's also a blocker. We get to put a blocker in, which I think is important right now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. This turn was awesome. So
So I'm feeling pretty good now, but I am at 9.
we're at 9 life. I will say the good thing is the Sultai deck probably doesn't have that many answers for the 7-drop, but let's see if I'm right about that. Is this Dismember? Colorless in the pool? Ooh, getting dismembered here. Brutal. Okay.
It is pretty brutal. So here I block here because I don't want to get blown out by a spell. I'm pretty insulated
Okay.
against Bowmaster because, yep, and they do Bowmaster and doesn't do anything.
So now you look like a genius here.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's just talk a little bit about that block. That block is basically saying if I block the Otter, any, instant will kind of blow me out in combat,
Mm-hmm.
including the Bowmaster.
Well,
But if you
Bowmaster
block,
wouldn't.
uh, the Otter was a
2/2.
2/2 because of Dismember, so Bowmaster would have blown you out.
How would it's not creature spell for prowess.
No, but it will ping your Tameo.
It can't because I have Torpor Orb.
Oh shoot. Got it. Okay, well, my turn to forget Torpor Orb. Okay, perfect. So, let's see. You block over there because you don't want your Tameo to die here. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. It's sound reasoning.
Because I am going to flip it this turn and uptick, which I think should help me a lot here.
Oh, for sure. This is great play. I had a point here. I just got flustered because I misrepresented the board here. Let's see if I can find back to it. So, let's say from your opponent's point of view here, they decide to dismember on the main phase.
Yeah.
But I guess that's a forced play, because if they don't, they let you block first. Yeah, okay, so that didn't give off any information. I was trying to figure out if them dismembering first was them telegraphing he didn't have the second spell. But it's not, because he removed a 4/4 that could have blocked, so never mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we flipped the Tameo to defend against small guys here. I like that a lot. We use our mana well instead of brainstorming. So this is the opposite of the first game because... Oh, yeah, exactly. Because in the first game, you basically said, I value, like, getting as deep as possible with brainstorm. But
Yeah.
here it's like your mana usage that's the most important thing. And for sure, I agree about that. Tameo plus here is good against small guys,
Yep.
and now you have a big one that's kind of hard to deal with. So looking to turn the corner here,
So,
hanging on to the fetch because of Rainstorm and no Surveil in the deck.
so here there's an argument here. I just like instant upticked, but maybe I should have went for the plow.
Okay, so let's look at the options here. So let's say you didn't put too much thought into it. So let's just get through the two scenarios.
So if I
So
pick up
yeah,
plow, I can represent something, and I have double doorkeeper thrall to block against the orc army token if I plow the otter token. So it's like
hmm
not the worst thing in the world. The problem is, it's not really a problem because I actually have a land drop, so I could reliably do everything here instead of uptick. But the other thing is the uptick also protects me against attacks in general too, while also presenting a second clock. And I've already plowed two bowmasters, so bowmaster is very low on my list of things to respect right now.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm. But I'll say this: upticking would. Okay, so what are the bad things about upticking? We can just try and go like pros and cons here. So, what are we exposing ourselves to? What are we hindering our own ability to start attacking? Are we so something that I thought about is if we tick up here and we get Wither Bloomed, that's kind of annoying.
yeah,
We know that's a card in their deck. We also know it's a card they don't currently have because they
yeah,
could have cast it.
exactly.
So you're getting very close to this ultimate, which is quite tempting because all you have to do is stall the game out. It feels like,
Yeah,
and the opponent has already stopped attacking, and you, as you alluded to, you have some creatures to kind of make that happen again. So now we have to. We have the combat step covered basically, right? That's how I
yeah,
would put it anyway.
yeah. And I actually do think I end up attacking because I have double doorkeeper thrall to block. Because they would need to
Ah,
cast two tokens. They would need to cast two spells to favorably kill a thrall, and this orc army token will never kill the thrall. So I'm like super insulated against removal spells. So if I can swing with the Null Drifter, force the sack on one of the lands, and just limit their options. Maybe I'm not supposed to attack because I'm ticking up this Tameo, but at the same time, I still think they're running Abrupt Decays. I still think they're running this town, but can just bounce my Tameo as well.
also a good point. So okay, so the attack here. Let's see. How does that play out?
And
Did we
here's the
play a lane this turn?
not yet. And here's the other thing
Okay.
is next turn, if I don't attack, they can actually pick up the this town by upgrading the Storm Chaser's talent.
So what is that? 4 mana?
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of time. I'm not gonna say working against you, but you kind of have to get things done, right?
Yeah.
So if you start attacking here, you're attacking on multiple axes, which I like in theory. Also, it's good we have our land drop to go because then we can play. No, it actually doesn't matter mana-wise. We're still going to 3 if we... Well, or I guess 4 if we fetch. Okay, so we can play 2 creatures.
So I really don't
So
want a tomb anymore.
we really don't want to tomb, I agree. So let's say we have to flash in 2 guys. We're at 4 life. Yeah, okay, I can see the attack. It's close because, as you alluded to, the status quo is actually decent for you.
Yeah. Because I
Hmm.
have double thrall. And Orc Army I can just ignore. I can completely ignore the Orc Army because I know I'm not going to brainstorm unless I absolutely have to give them an out for a Bowmaster.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm thinking if I can just, I have a 2 turn clock here. I can force. I'm attacking on the axis of Tamia that I can protect, and I'm attacking on the
Mhm.
axis of they only have 2 cards in hand, and this Null Drifter is going to start just like making a ton of value from the
No,
Annihilator one.
yeah, no doubt about the value. So the value is important because it shortens the opponent's window to, get out of this. So let's see, Doorkeeper Thrall. What if they have Uro? Like, let's imagine a turn cycle where you flash into the Thralls, you block if they even attack,
If they have
then second
Uro, I
wind
pick
into
up Plow.
Uro. Then yeah, great plan B. So we have had that insulated. Right now, the exercise for me is trying to remember and imagine what's in the opponent's deck combined, and then try and check as many boxes as possible. Right?
Yeah,
If we get Witherbloom coming in on the Tameo, it is what it is. Then we kind of have to
and
go
Witherbloom
back,
is usually a one of, so I'm not like super enticed to play around it.
which is totally reasonable. And then we have a clue, we have a brainstorm. Like we can easily get back into that game. So I like the attack here mainly because that deck can be a bit mana hungry, and even just a few attacks here will hinder their ability to play the game. So once again, we don't know what their outs are, but by making their resources, shrink, it's like the dress down you played last game. You
Yeah.
couldn't necessarily name what would crush you, but you checked some boxes and you did a good job of minimizing the opponent's opportunities. This is kind of the same thing. I feel like I like the attack here.
So let's see what happens. I'm 99% sure I attack. So I see what they do. I think they probably just get rid of the mist. Oh, they get rid of the Orc Army. It makes sense because I have the Tameo.
Yeah, great point. Also, just a small detail I like that you wait on playing your land here. There's no reason to let your opponent know that they're not getting wastelanded or you don't have a saga, whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. Like it's just a tiny bit. It's just a good habit that someday will be clutch.
So they find Brainstorm, which is really bad for us because it means I probably need to sack my Doorkeeper Thrall here.
Yeah, because we're building prowess here. I see. I wouldn't say it's not that bad. Because for every turn that passes by, you're upticking, you're attacking with Null Drifter. In general, I'm mainly just interested in if the opponent just had like situational removal all game, they could easily have had a fatal push from start to finish in this game, for
Yeah.
instance. That's something that I would expect one of my opponent's remaining cards to be. So then, one Thrall is dead. Then you have to flash in the other. Here's Doorkeeper. And I like this. I assume the opponent's attacking Tameo. Oh, they're not.
No, they're going for me,
Okay.
which is
so,
why I'm so inclined to block.
yeah, I
So
was
there's an
about to say,
argument to putting both here, but this forces. So then they have this town. Now this is brutal.
because your Tameo gets reset
Yeah, and they get
and
another
they
1/1.
eat the Thrall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. So let's see what you end up doing here. Are you cracking a clue?
Yeah, I just draw a card here.
Okay, so using your mana in a good way. Brainstorm can dig deeper on your turn, so I like that logic.
So here I play Dreadnought. I play Tameo, and then I just pass. I don't even think I. Oh, actually, I do attack. Oh, I attack because I have Doorkeeper Thrall as another blocker.
So again, you're valuing hitting them on two axes. You're saying I both want to keep like defense and not die to these stupid otters, but I also want to make sure that the turns exchanged are in my favor, thanks to the
Yeah.
annihilation and the life here. I really like how you play this, because it would be so tempting to, just play full defense here. I do wonder if we were supposed to have a flip Tameo in play at this point. Let's see.
So in my head, maybe I was supposed to, but then I can't Doorkeeper Thrall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
you see
here
it here.
they force a vigor. So this is probably the most smart decision of the game, and I do end up brainstorming. And this is where I fucked up. Was I by doing this I actually flipped the Tamia, so I lose a blocker, and then I lose because of that. Because the last two cards in their hand are force blue cards,
Ouch.
and I actually brainstorm because I realize like if I find another, cause I haven't seen a single counterspell. I think I saw one, and I have a lot. So there's a pretty good chance I could find it because I've went through half my deck. So I
Yeah.
brainstormed to look for a counterspell, which is pretty likely. And then if that fails, I can flash indoor. Actually, I can't flash indoor keep a thrall because then I die because I have to ancient
Yeah.
tomb.
Yeah.
So
So there's
actually, so here it's brainstorming. Here is a mistake, and I should have thought about this more.
yeah, brainstorm is not an out here. So did you realize it would flip Samio, or was
No,
that
I
kind of
didn't.
one of the?
I was like
Yeah,
one of those things.
exactly.
Was like, fuck,
I
I
could easily
forgot.
have made that as well. I'm very slow to adopt, stuff like Bowmaster's Hull Breacher, all of those like cards that were new at some point, and get them to normal play patterns. So yeah, that is very unfortunate
I just
because
blanked on that it would flip my Tameo.
yeah. So now you have to hit a plow or force blue card in order to stay in it. Yeah.
And if I brainstorm, I need to hit force blue card. So I should have never done this.
Plow is good enough, right?
Plow is good enough. So I actually do find force blue card.
Oh, sick.
But
Okay,
unfortunately,
so yeah, so you now know that you're trading off with the opponent's force, and it ends up poorly. So, wow, yeah. So Force of Vigor is not a card I would ever expect. Um,
I honestly forgot this card existed, to be honest with you.
yeah, and especially out of a Beanstalk deck, like
Yeah.
it's not anything I would expect. So let me just put it this way: it explains a lot why the opponent never sacrificed their Wasteland. Um, but I don't think it's realistic that you pick up on that and then you call it as, oh, he has Force of Vigor somewhere. That's not, the card sees next to zero play, so don't sweat it. But let's say you're playing against a well-known deck and it plays two Force of Vigors, then that would be your tell right there,
Yeah.
that the Wasteland was never sacrificed.
And the interesting
Uh,
thing is, I would have never expected them to have force because I thought
yeah,
they would have forced the Dreadnought.
yeah, exactly. So it's only because they have a super good answer to Dreadnought that they don't care about it.
And the thing is, they're now hellbent, so they had to draw one of these cards off the top.
They had to complete, yeah, they had to
They had to
complete the
complete the
fourth
whole.
blue card, and
Yeah.
that is exactly what makes it into the category of we couldn't realistically worry about that. So that's not what you could worry about was flipping your own Tameo without realizing that was the interaction. Like that was, you
Yeah.
know, that's where you can take responsibility and write that in your mental notes. Um, so yeah, wow, this is cool because the opponent found a way to win a game where they were like behind on all axes basically, and they managed to tempo you out on the back of chip damage and I guess
The
one
this
too
town
many
ain't big
ancient tomb.
enough. Yeah. And too many.
Yeah,
Because I did what? I think I did 8 damage to myself with Ancient Tomb this game.
hmm so that's just something that makes your deck harder to play because the upside of ancient tomb also has a downside, right?
Yeah.
That was a great game, like really really great game. Lots of micro decisions, and I really liked how your like the role assessment of oh who's ahead, oh I pressure on multiple pressure points, oh I can capitalize on this, narrow down the opponent's hand. Like I feel like you did so many things right. So it's really hard to say a lot about the outcome, right? Because let's say the opponent doesn't have force of will. Um, then we have a different game, right?
Yeah. For sure.
So that's why the outcome is less important than all the good stuff that happened in the middle of it. So do you do any adjustments here based on what just happened in the
I
in the
still
start?
forgot about the Lavinia, and I'm still salty about it because it would have been good too. Because I got blown out by this town pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
my barometer is if I have to force something, it's a losing interaction for me. If it's not like something if they're using a card that I had that they're using aggressively that I have to force, it's generally a losing situation with force of
yeah,
will. Like if I have to
yeah,
protect myself with force in a combo, like I feel like it's a bad use of force, and my combo isn't going to kill them immediately. Like if I'm forcing offensively, it's better, but I'm like kind of forcing defensively. It's kind of like a weird one because I'm forcing to get pressure, so it's kind of an offensive force, but it's kind of a I need to force. So if
yeah.
I just
It
have
doesn't
Lavinia,
doesn't
it
feel
turns
good.
off they're this towns and their forces, and now they can't pitch cast Force of Vigor. Like there's just a lot of benefit, and I just kind of blank on putting it in.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly the corner. You put that in the sideboard for other reasons. So that's basically just, again, a testament to we can prepare all we want. We can think about how stuff plays out on average. But at the end of the day, we have to play a unique match of Magic the Gathering. And there will be a lot of information exchange. There will be a lot of realization. Oh, yeah, this actually works against what the opponent is doing. I never thought about this, but now I do, right? So that's why we want to prepare as hard as possible so there's a higher chance you kind of pick up on that in real time. Um, so that's just a cool lesson about
Yeah.
Magic is a complicated game, right? And the more you prepare, the more brain space you have in the moment. So No worries about that. You should see that as motivation moving forward.
For sure.
So game three here, pretty standard stuff. Keep our fetch because we play Surveil and Brainstorm. Develop the Tameo. If it sticks, we like where the game is going. If it gets killed, we play another one. So
Yep, and I'm like very happy. I
ooh,
play the
nice draw.
Saga here,
Yeah, I
and
like that.
I actually just go for the Torpor Orb
Oh,
because it's just very mana efficient. And
okay.
I also kind of want to be on the construct plan, and then
So
they waste me. The
so
reason I want to be on the
interesting.
construct plan is because usually those types of decks, unless they're bringing in Pernicious Deed, have a really hard time with constructs. And because I have a Torpor Orb out already, like it just kind of bolsters my artifact count.
Yeah, and it makes Dreadnought good.
Yes.
So if they draw forces later, you can kind of cheat it into play. There's a lot of potential in that play. And this is actually interesting because you found a better play than to follow up with a Tameo. Um, and you kind of use your deck's potential, its effectiveness alongside the Saga and mana efficiency as the counter arguments to just playing out the Tameo. I think that's super solid.
So it gets wasted. So my plan is in shambles. Um,
Yeah, we're
but
definitely back to the drawing board here.
yeah. So I draw, but now we're in a pretty bad spot because the Torpor Orb, having the second Torpor Orb is pretty brutal.
Hmm.
I hit this town, the Storm Chasers talent, because the way this town works is they need a permanent to bounce.
Hmm.
And if they bounce their own otter token, it's a winning line for us. If I pending the otter token and they have this town, that's just value for them.
Yeah, so totally agree. And the whole theory is this game is going to go long, so that
Yeah.
interaction is very likely to happen.
Yep.
So it's way easier for you to deal with a random creature than the value you can kind of get buried in the long term, right?
Yeah. So I block. I imagine this is just to make me think about something, but in my head, I'm thinking there's nothing to think about here.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
definitely.
block. Like if you want to dismember this Tamia, you can. Like if you have a free spell to kill the Tamia, then feel free.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you need to realize if a certain card exists.
Like he's essentially just testing me to see if I'm like gonna play scared for no reason.
Yeah, what he should have done was attack first and then play the beanstalk after, if you actually wanted that bluff to work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um,
So,
and- well, you got commanded here, so obviously now you look like a genius for not developing your second torpor orb.
well, it wouldn't have mattered, right? Because they could only kill one Torpor Orb.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm just saying it's a good play to slow roll it
Oh, that's what.
because
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I had no reason to play it because I also can hold up now, draw a card, and dress down for whatever reason.
yeah, yeah. So again, that's just an example of a play that makes sense on all axes. You make them, play a bad Witherbloom command. You potentially can use your mana better. Um, so it's a win-win. You're not giving up anything by slow rolling it.
So here I just do pretty classic. Yep, leave that on top. So I'm in a really good spot now. If they
Also,
kill,
the opponent breakdown land. Oh, they didn't. I'm sorry, they wastelanded. My bad.
yeah, yeah. And I just play the other door because I know what I want to draw, and I want to be able to just slam the Drifter next turn without having to worry about Doorkeeper Thrall dying, and I don't want to have
Mhm.
to commit the dress down if I don't have to.
Right.
Because committing the dress down also means that now here is actually I should have committed the dress down. I should have not. I should have played the dress down. Granted, also if they had days, then they would days protect this, and then we're in a really bad spot.
Yeah. So I'm basically just trying to. Let's see. You used your mana to what? Cast a orb.
Yeah, I just main phase the orb.
So you already had your Thrall in play from earlier. You end step that one, and then you
Yeah,
play. So at this point, if you considered, okay, my opponent's probably a three Murktide deck, and then you decided to go this route for other reasons, that's totally fine. So I'm mainly curious if you considered the Murktide on this turn, if you remember.
not really.
So that was
I
probably something you need to add because that's a substantial downside that the opponent can play a big Murktide instead of a small one here.
yeah,
Um, Especially with Murktide is just a likely card they have at this point.
yeah, no, for sure.
So that's something to consider at least. And then maybe you end up at the same conclusion that, oh, you just want a second orb in play. But at the very least, you had the internal discussion.
The reason why I played the Torpor Orb is because I don't want to be in a situation because I'm so strangled on mana right now after the Wastelands. Um, the because he Wastelanded twice, so I'm like it's actually pretty bad on my mana because I really do need my mana. Uh, and if I play the Torpor Orb, what this allows me to do is just slam Null Drifter no problem. Because what I'm worried about if I don't play the Torpor Orb is if they remove my Thrall, I'm cooked. And if I were to
Yeah.
hold up Torpor Orb and go for a dress down, that also means my Tameo can't flip, which is actually kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Because I would like to flip this Tameo too. So I guess the punish here is Murktide. Specifically, it's only Murktide, but my
Yes.
reward is if they have any amount of removal, then my play was better. So the only punish here was Murktide. Them having removal was what I was playing around. I didn't play around Murktide. And in
Yeah. So
hindsight, I think it's still the correct play on
yeah.
average.
So yeah, that's exactly how we need to think about it. We need to think about it like what's the punish and what's the upside. So I'll say this: you're playing. Your play is to make sure that the next draw of your deck has more, success rate, basically.
Yeah. And it's a
You want to
very
up,
important card for me to have.
you want the success rate to go up of your deck, but you also made the success rate of the opponent's deck go up, right? So now you have to
Yeah.
compare those two, and this is again back to what's the most likely thing that will happen versus what is the most, you know, crucial thing that will happen. Um, and I think it's quite close what will happen the most often, like whether you draw a payoff or they have a Murktide is somewhat close.
Well,
Um,
they
s-
have 3 Murktides and probably 10 removal spells along those lines, right?
I don't know if they have 10 removal spells, but they will for sure have a substantial number.
Well, they'll have 4 this towns right off the bat, right? Then they've already showed us Dismember. We can assume they have Murderous Cut, of which
Yeah,
probably at least 2. So right off the bat, there's 7. And I think we saw. Did we ever see a Fatal Push?
we
I
did
don't.
see a Fatal Push. She cast one already this game, actually.
Yeah. So then we have Fatal Push, which is at least a 2 of. So right off the bat, there's 4 plus 2 Murderous Cuts, 6 plus 2 Fatal Push, 8 plus Dismembers. So I'm
Yes,
putting it around 10 removal spells he could have in his deck.
totally fair. So why is the Temio still alive this game?
Honestly, I just don't think he's respecting it.
Okay. So that is also has to do with like your read at the table. If the opponent is, ooh, they really don't want to get dreadnoughted, but I get to attack over and over with my Tamio. That's a read you can have for sure. Um, so I think your math checks out, and then maybe there's a little bit of read that has to be like in that combination because your math checks out and your odds are good, but maybe how the game played out can kind of color that valuation a
Yeah,
tiny bit.
that's true.
I, st- I still like your play. I'm just saying it's more complicated than on the surface. I like your play. We got punished. Also, to be fair, we didn't see Murktide up until now in the match.
Yeah, it definitely
Um,
wasn't top of mind.
so there was something about that where it's like, can you really fit all of that? You play Uro, you probably also play Murderous Cut. How much can you stress your graveyard over there? Like
Yeah.
that is also a consideration. But yeah, realizing it's a thing is important. But yeah, big punish here. 7/7 is brutal.
But so I slam my guy. I can't unfortunately attack with the Tamiyo because then it just dies to Murktide.
Did we know about that draw, by the way, or was that just you playing to your potential?
No, no, we had Meticulous Archive.
Okay, okay, that changes a lot because so it was known. I thought you were only playing to the potential of the
No,
top of your
no.
deck.
It was known we had the
Ah,
Drifter. That's why I wanted to slam the Torpor Orb.
yes. Okay. Well, that blows a lot of the counter arguments out of the water. This is just strictly better because you know that this is a good interaction, and you're guarding against a couple dozen of cards.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is good. This is good. Strictly good. It's mainly just to realize that Murktide is the punish, like, and then say, oh yeah, but this weighs more, so we go for that, like with confidence, right? It's better than just doing it in the dark. We
Right.
actually know we have to know what we're up against, like the argument is up against, basically.
So here
Okay.
he has Murderous Cut to kill that. So that's dead. draws a card, and here I'm just so cooked because he kills that, and then he fatal pushes the dreadnought,
Yeah, I was about to say
and he has
once
all
that
the
happens,
yeah, and then now the game is
then
over.
yeah. So sometimes that happens. We die to a pile of removal. They get to cantrip a few times off of Beanstalk, and then we just pound for pound are not the better deck. Like that's just how it is sometimes. We barely get to survive with the Tameo here.
I
Um,
brainstorm to look for something that can do something.
yeah, the thing is
They
your deck
force
is
the
not.
yeah.
Oh, this is just good play from the opponent.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I have one card left in hand, and they know I'm digging, and they potential lethal on the crackback. This is just objectively correct. Because the other thing
Because
is the murderous cut also buffs up the Murktide, so they have
yeah,
lethal now with like any amount of cantrips.
yeah, I
I
really like to play because they basically just make sure nothing weird happens this turn because you need to double spell this turn to have stand a chance more or less.
yeah, and then they
Um,
pick up Force of Will here, or
growing
no,
the
they
Murktide
they
further.
pick up Murderous Cut, I guess. Yep, they grow the Murktide. I probably should have dressed down on my end step just to prevent prowess triggers and such.
Ooh,
Uh,
yeah,
but they actually don't have any spells here, regardless.
yeah, that's actually a good call. That part of a way that makes you survive here is to kind of get over that turn and get into like some double plow or something along those lines.
Yeah. So here I'm deciding if it makes sense to make a construct.
Yeah,
The thing is, I don't have a plow in the yard, so I'm kind of thinking maybe I just need to draw a card. So I think, what did I do? Yeah, I draw a card because a construct doesn't help me against a flyer. And then they bring in Bromaster, and I'm just dead. Well, not dead, dead, but basically dead.
yeah, that is brutal. So after realizing that you were gonna sack the clue, we should probably have done that to see if we could spike the plow in the attack step.
Yeah, that's true.
It's sometimes you kind of it has to do with the sense of urgency, right? So you kind of have to figure out how desperate should I be? Like just imagine you draw the plow and then you took how much 10 damage for no reason. Like that would just be so it's mainly just to give yourself the chance to get lucky. I think that's just the
Yeah.
message.
So here I actually do see kind of an out in that, unfortunately, I don't have enough mana, but there is a small out here. But the thing
Hmm.
is, they have Murderous Cut, so we're just dead anyway.
Yeah, they
But
did
the
push
out
back with that.
was if we had another mana or something, we could swing in with the Dreadnought here and then put in a Doorkeeper Thrall to block the Murktide, and then we win on the Crackback because of the Tameo uptick.
Yeah.
But we don't have all the mana to do that, and we also
Yeah.
know they're drawing Murderous Cut.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like trying to picture what would it actually take for me to cheese this game. So some people can go like, yeah, but you didn't have that extra mana. Oh, if you only had, but it's good to think about what would have have taken basically. So I like that thinking. I think it's good to just activate. So despite you being dead, I still think there's multiple ways you can lose a game. You can just lose a game, or you can think about how close was I and could I have done something to manipulate that. So I think that's pretty cool. I like that you're thinking like that. But obviously, yeah, that was a great game that you picked because you continuously had choices that
Yeah,
how to say it, that it had to do with you figuring out how scared am I of the opponent's game plan, how motivated am I to activate my own game plan, who's actually benefiting from this game going on more turns. Should I try and shut down the window? Should I try and prolong the game? How desperate am I with my draw spells? How desperate is the
yeah,
opponent? The information exchange. Oh, I'm giving up this information. He's giving up that information. What can we use that for? I saw a cool quote lately, which was from a poker coach who basically said something like, "What is the opponent's range, and what are you going to do about it?" Which is actually another way of explaining how I approach the information that I gather in a game. It's the same point. I don't just say, "Oh, my opponent missed a land drop," or "Oh, my opponent slow rolled the wasteland." I'm trying to ask why. Like,
yeah,
find the answer for my observations. Oh, observations are one thing. But the why, the analysis, that's where the key of some people say like, oh, it's like you can predict the future or what, like use that some kind of metaphor. But it's connecting the dots and then saying, oh, what does that mean? Oh, we saw this and this
Right.
and this. So this player has that tendency. Their draw is telling me this. And I think putting together that information is just also fun. That is exactly the point is we have some observations and what do they mean for how we're going to approach things. Because sometimes when you play, for instance, I've played like Mono Red Prison or whatever, then you can be like, oh, if the opponent has this card, you don't have any agency. Then you're just observing and saying, oh, I will probably lose to this card, but you don't have any power to
Yeah.
counteract it or whatever. Then it's just observations, and then you can't do anything strategically. But the decks you play, you can actually do a lot strategically when it comes to how do you hedge? You hedge against removal spells because he's a freaking Sultai deck, and you're the Sultai master, and you know the removal suite, and you've seen this and that for games 1 and 2. So your play,
Because I was right about the removal, right? He did have the removal spell in hand. What I was playing around was he only had one removal spell, and that's why he wasn't respecting Tamio. If I thought he had two removal spells, I think he would have used one on Tamio. So I put him on having one removal spell, and he
yeah,
was saving it for
exactly,
something important.
yeah,
But he actually had a
exactly,
ton of patience and had three
yes.
removal spells. So we got cooked.
Yeah, but that's a good observation. That okay. So if the opponent has removal, but it didn't kill Tamio, it makes a lot of sense they only have one because they don't want to die to one
Exactly.
dreadnought. Like
Exactly.
that's again saying this happened, and what does that mean? And then you're hedging for that by playing the way you did with the Null Drifter to have the Torpor Orb and play alongside the Thrall.
Exactly, because I
Um,
knew the Null Drifter was coming. So that's why I wanted to
hmm
commit the Torpor Orb to guarantee that this Null Drifter was going to get me my cards and give me my 3 for 1. Because I
Yeah,
knew the Null Drifter would get killed, but I figured I'm getting 3 cards out of this. You're losing a card, and I'm drawing 2. So I'm net 3 cards. What I didn't take into account though was one, we never saw our own removal spells. We saw the single pending. We never saw any of our plows. Because if we found a plow, that game is very different.
yeah.
Um, but we just couldn't. I mean, it happens, right? We only have 4 plows in the deck. We don't have that much of a critical mass of removal. But that actually did get me thinking about the sideboard too. Is like maybe I just do need more removal because this meta is
hmm
starting to turn out to be very fair. Um,
Yeah, that's a great point about how much a single removal spell can change because then you don't get, let's say, tempoed out for the lack of better word, right? And
yeah,
you had more resources than the opponent, or at least you could match them, right? But you kind of got tempoed out and you didn't have time to, you were just under pressure for a lot of that game. Um, yeah, that was a really good game. And especially because you're getting into the mindset of, oh, I saw this and I saw that. He reacted like this when I did this. Like then you're painting the picture of the match based on the information exchanged, and that's the high level stuff. And then when you play against an unknown entity like this deck, you know, that's where things can get a bit iffy, and you can get surprised, and you don't
yeah.
have a lot of experience. Um, so that's also part of why Magic is awesome, and part of the advantage you like to go for when you brew decks, right? So
Yeah, for
a little
sure.
bit of a double-edged sword here when we're playing against imperfect information. That's kind of what you like to do as well on the
Yeah.
behalf of the opponent.
Yeah. I tend to like to play deck. I play my own decks mostly, right? Like it's very rare that I just take someone else's list.
Yeah,
Um, the but that's kind of just how I like playing the game. I consider myself like someone who likes to. I consider myself that I enjoy deck building more than I like playing. I know that
yeah.
probably sounds funny, but I really
No,
do
I think
enjoy the
people
deck.
like the draft more than the games.
Yeah,
It's kind of
exactly. It's
kind of
like
similar.
yeah,
So I've heard that one before. The biggest takeaway from this, or no, that would be the wrong way to put it. A takeaway here is basically just there were a few times where some timings on your, especially cards you have available instant speed or activations like
you're
the
drawing the
clue,
clue. Yeah,
and there was one more thing about maybe yeah in the end here when you basically talked about garbage time in the um when we first got to know each other, and this game was maybe on in like a gray area of you're losing very hard. So what you decided to do with the dress down on end step, no not
yeah.
oh that no that wasn't dress down,
It was
which
dressed
was
down.
it?
It was
It
dressed.
was, I know it was also a clue. It was the clue here in the end where you end up sacking
Oh
on
yeah, yeah,
instead.
to see if I could draw plow.
Exactly. So it's just like, okay, let's try and actually spike and realize that if I'm going to do it anyway. So your first thought is, yeah, but I didn't have force or daze in my deck to hit, so wouldn't do anything. But yeah, but the opponent doesn't know that. So if you're
Yeah, yeah.
sacking in response there, they will subconsciously think about daze and force because those would have been outs at the time. But when you don't crack it, you're basically saying, I don't have those cards, which is a huge advantage for the opponent.
Right.
So it's just being wary of that timing. That was like my biggest takeaway because you had a two, let's call it lazy sequences with
Yeah,
exactly
definitely.
that.
Yeah, I would definitely call that very being very lazy. And admittedly, right, like I don't know what time I was playing this game, but the quality of my play when it comes to laziness,
Yeah.
the quality diminishes as the night goes on.
Oh, that is just the nature of the beast and the
Yeah,
resources, and you
yeah.
had a long day at the time of. So I'm here to like strive for perfection, right? So
And that was definitely points on the board that were free that I didn't take. And I'm a big believer of you always take your points on the board. Like people, I once helped someone in an interview, and they said like, "Oh, should I wear a suit?" Like I said, you should always wear a suit to an interview, especially for a firm that would respect it. Only because at most it will help you, at worst it'll do nothing. And I
yeah,
consider that free points on the board, and that's what that draw was. Like
that is
the
incredible because so you have real life experience of exactly this, where you're saying there's literally zero downside,
there's
and there
literally zero.
could
It
be
could help you. Yeah,
there could be an upside, and for me, that's enough in Magic. Then I'll try and do it
exactly.
as often as possible, and
Because
yeah,
yeah, if there's zero downside and it works out in your favor once every 100 games, that's a 1% increase for
still
free. Would you take a one
still works.
percent increase for free? Like, of course you do. It's free.
Yeah, and that's a good motivation, and that you have the like the analogy from your professional life, and y- whatever we can use as motivation to build those habits. That's for sure works, and it's going to be different for some. It's going to be, oh yeah, maybe I can win like one game per year, but then it's going to be epic. But it's just find the motivation to do this smart thing, and care about the details, because I also believe in some games that's going to be the difference. The
Yeah.
story you're telling, and the opponent then holding their brakes a little bit because, oh, you did dig for days for game two, so now game three I don't want to get dazed and look silly here, and then all of a sudden you bought yourself a time walk, and that's what's going to end up changing the outcome basically.
Yeah. And as you said, those free we talked about that a lot, right? Like the free time walks, like take your free time walks. If they think you have
Yeah,
days and they don't do something, well, do you take your power 9 card? Like 100% you do.
yeah, so the more we can do to tell that story, the better. And the timing of those clue sacrifices were definitely up there as free opportunities. So I just wanted to highlight that. But I also want to say you played super well here. You understand what your own deck is capable of, and then you try your best to realize what the opponent's deck is capable of, and how that context kind of how do they collide basically.
Yeah.
And that's where Magic is exciting for me, because if I was just goldfishing my deck at the night table, like that's not fun, right? We need another player, and we need to get some reads, and we need to connect the dots and solve the case. Like that's what I think is great about Magic.
No, and I like that game a lot. It was a ton of fun. Actually, Bailey and I talked about it on Twitter a little bit because it was a
Okay.
pretty crazy cool game. Game three was a bit of
Yeah.
a wash, but still, at game three, I presented like a pretty huge turn. Right, I put three permanents in play. I drew cards, and I presented like a threat.
Yeah.
And I presented lethal on the crackback if they swing with the Murktide actually, but then they went removal, 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 and I died.
Yeah, and
Uh,
sometimes that's the
yeah,
that's the short story of it. So that's why I care about all the small steps leading there, because a lot of Magic games just comes down to, oh, my cards had my opponent's cards covered, or vice versa, right? So we want to focus on all the small stuff that prepares us to win the
yeah,
close ones, the
yeah,
those that are up for grabs, as I like to call them.
for sure. But no,
But
other than
yeah,
that, it was cool. I realized we spent like an hour on that game, but we can talk about what we want to do next week. We'll talk on the timing as well. But I don't want to keep you too long because I'm sure it's your bedtime right now.
yeah, it's certainly my bedtime, but I'm always happy to finish things up. So don't worry about that. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for the time here. So I highly enjoyed this. Let's try and keep in touch about what to do next week.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
Oh,
At the
go.
end of the day, it's your session, right? So, but I'll of course chime in if we need some inspiration.
The I wanted to give you an update though. The one of my buddies in the chat, Wisehelm1999 in the chat. I sent him this list, the list that we've been working on with the hull breachers, and he actually took it to a Win a Tabernacle event and then won it all with the list.
Oof, that's
So
sick.
yeah, so congrats to him. And
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that's one of the best feelings. And for me, that's what makes Magic into a team game once you
yeah,
have a network that you care about. So for you, it feels like a victory that that person did well, right?
yeah, 100%.
So I love finding ways to make Magic a team game, but there's also a lot of, pro players and grinders who they just worry about their own path, right? But it's really cool once you can be invested in others and genuinely be happy on their behalf. I really
Yeah,
like that part of the game, and that's why I love the team tournaments. I just got a
I
Facebook
love
memory
team
today in the
trios.
team tournaments, and it was good memories. That was just the best feeling to
I,
do well with your best friends and take on
yeah,
the opposition.
I will say I love Legacy, but do you know? Do you want to know what my favorite format truly is? My
Mm,
favorite.
it's probably Team Sealed
It's
then,
Team
because
Sealed. It's got to be
yeah,
Teams. It's obviously Team Sealed. If you've never played Team Sealed, for the viewers in the chat, you guys should get your two best friends and go do Team Sealed, and it's a ton of fun. It's so much fun. You get like your what is it, 18 packs or 12 packs? Depends
yeah,
on
it's
the
12
turn.
packs.
Yeah, the competitive Team Sealed is 12, but I've seen like casual ones do 18. You get your 12 packs, you build your three decks and you all just kind of like make fun of each other the whole time. Usually when we play, we'll have like a running bet. Who's ever got the lowest record has to pay for dinner. Uh,
That
so
is funny. I've played a lot of team tournaments, and funnily enough, my friend Michael has been so unlucky. Like we have won. I placed second in a team GP, and his personal record was maybe something like, I don't know, 7-8 or something. And then we played on the Team Modern Super League. I don't know if you remember the Super
I
Leagues with
do.
Randy Bueller.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we were lucky to win a season, and his record was like 2-13 at the end. So it was just so funny because he got all the decks that we worked the least on basically, because he was just like, yeah, give me whatever. And then me and Thomas would just play the decks we were so comfortable with, and it was just so funny because yeah, he did a great job, but he just kept getting crushed, and he still won, right? So he would
Yeah.
have paid for a few dinners back in the day, which is kind of funny to think about.
You should do it next time your Team Shield event. It makes it more fun, I think. I think it
Yeah, the
truly makes
problem
it
is
more
when
fun.
you're distributing the decks, there's
Oh,
some
that's true.
strategy to. At the end of the day, for me, you win as a team and lose as a team, and then I only just tease him a little bit now and then about that record, because winning a tournament against the best players in the world with a 213 score is just funny.
Yeah. That just also means that you two crushed.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was the perfect storm for sure.
But no, this is fun. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah,
I
for
don't want to
sure.
keep you. I realize it is your bedtime. I'm probably gonna. I
Yeah,
want to go eat too. I'm like starving.
yeah,
But cool.
exactly.
The
Thanks so much, Everin. I had a lot of fun as well, and yeah, let's definitely keep in touch and set up something useful for next time and activate those big brains of ours.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. We'll talk soon, Andreas. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sounds awesome. See you,
All right.
Evan.